Our presentation today is How You Lead Matters, using NCEES to improve instruction and outcomes.
I am Jennifer Bass. I am the NCEES consultant here at DPI. So anything that you have questions about for policy and procedure with the NCEES process, I'm the person that you would contact. And I'm joined today by my partner, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for spending time with us today. I'm Janice Frazier, the Co-Director of Educator Performance with the Department of Public Instruction.
So today, this session is designed to support North Carolina school administrators in implementing the NCEES evaluation process with fidelity and purpose. By the end of the day, our participants are going to explore effective practices for conducting those teacher evaluations and learn actionable strategies for delivering meaningful, growth-oriented observation feedback. Our administrators today will leave better equipped to foster improved instructional outcomes and professional growth across their schools.
Right. Good morning again, everyone. And we are going to begin. The title of our webinar is How You Lead Matters, but our very hyper focus today is How You Evaluate Matters. And as school leaders, we are responsible for multiple systems and processes, but few have greater impact on teaching quality than the way we evaluate educators. Today, I want us to think beyond compliance. Fulfilling an evaluation process is not the goal. Improving instruction and student outcomes is the goal. Every educator in your building needs to and deserves to know what is expected of them. In fact, most educators genuinely want to be successful. They typically want to know how you define effective practice, how they are performing, and where they can grow. When expectations are unclear, achieving successful outcomes and growth becomes difficult. When feedback is absent or it's superficial, improvement either slows or is non-existent. But when expectations are clear and feedback is timely, honest, and supportive, educators have the information they need to improve their practice. So, moving forward, one of the most important concepts to remember is that the NCEES rubric serves multiple purposes. It is not just an evaluation instrument used at the end of the year. It is also a supervision and coaching tool throughout the year. The self-assessment helps educators reflect on their own practice. Observations provide opportunities to collect evidence and engage in professional conversations. Finally, the summary rating form captures the culmination of all available evidence related to performance. The key point is this: the evaluation rubric should be actively used throughout the year and serve as the foundation for your professional interactions with the educators that you supervise, not simply referenced when ratings are due. The descriptors within the rubric represent expectations. They help educators understand what developing, proficient, accomplished, and distinguished practice looks like. As evaluators, our responsibility is to continually connect observed evidence to those descriptors so educators can clearly understand both their strengths and their areas for growth. Research and experience consistently show that processes alone do not create improvement. The impact comes from how those processes are implemented. Two PSUs can use the exact same evaluation system and achieve very different results. The difference is typically not the tool. The difference is leadership. Educators notice how we prioritize evaluation activities. Do we rush through conferences? Do we delay the feedback? Do we simply complete forms? Or do we approach evaluations as opportunities to coach and develop professionals? Implementation reflects our priorities. NCEES becomes a powerful tool when administrators intentionally and strategically use it to communicate expectations, recognize strengths, identify areas for growth, and support improvement efforts. The process itself does not create growth. Meaningful leadership within the process creates growth. When we talk about fidelity, we are really asking three questions. First, are we completing the full NCEES process as designed? Second, are we honoring timelines and deadlines? Third, are we providing meaningful feedback? Timeliness matters because feedback loses value when too much time passes between observation and conversation. Honesty matters because educators cannot improve what they do not know. Support matters because identifying an area for growth without offering guidance leaves educators without a pathway forward. An impactful reflection question for evaluators is, if I supervised this teacher for 5 years and continued providing the same type of feedback I currently give, would I expect meaningful growth in practice? If the answer is no, working to strengthen the quality of your feedback conversations will be time very well spent. If teachers are the heart of a school, principals are the backbone. This is a quote from Matt Bristow Smith, 2019 North Carolina Wells Fargo Principal of the Year. This quote reminds us that principals play a critical role in determining the health of a school. Educators are often described as the heart of the school because they directly impact students every day. But the backbone provides structure, support, and alignment. The same is true for school leadership. Principals establish expectations. Principals create conditions for growth. And principals make all the difference in whether evaluation is viewed by educators, the educators they supervise, as compliance or professional learning. Whether or not we realize it, we are constantly communicating our beliefs about NCEES through our actions. If evaluations are rushed, postponed, or treated as paperwork, educators quickly conclude that the process has little value. Conferences are thoughtful, timely, and growth-focused. Educators see the process differently. Please take a moment to consider the messages you are currently sending. Do your actions demonstrate that NCEES is important? Do educators leave conferences with clarity about your expectations? Do educators understand specifically what successful performance look like as you define it? Remember, most educators want to do good work. They want to meet expectations. They want to grow professionally. An evaluator's role is to ensure they know what those expectations are and to provide the feedback necessary to help them reach them. This is what transforms evaluation from a compliance activity to a professional growth system. If we truly value the evaluation process, that value must be visible through our actions. First, we protect time for evaluations, and that is challenging in the busy day of a school administrator. However, what gets scheduled gets done. Second, we provide thorough feedback and coaching rather than checking boxes. Third, we consistently use rubric language in our conversations so educators understand exactly how observed evidence connects to professional standards. Follow up. Growth does not happen through a single conversation. It requires ongoing support and monitoring. Finally, we provide appropriate resources, coaching, mentoring, or professional development opportunities to help educators improve. Think about the strongest leaders you've worked with. They didn't simply identify growth areas. They partnered with people throughout the improvement process. The same mindset should guide our evaluation practices. Next, I want to highlight an important leadership tension. Most of us want to provide feedback that will help us retain great educators. However, retention cannot become the primary purpose of evaluation. When evaluation becomes a retention tool only, feedback often becomes overly positive. Ratings become inflated and opportunities for growth are missed. On the other hand, when evaluation is viewed as a professional growth tool, feedback becomes honest, evidence-based, and connected to outcomes. This does not mean being harsh. It means being truthful. The most supportive thing we can do for educators is to tell them what they're doing well, identify areas where improvement is needed, and help them close the gap. Educators cannot improve areas they do not know exist. If we assume our educators want to succeed, then we must also assume they deserve accurate information about their performance. Honest feedback delivered with respect, support, and clarity is not harmful to retention. In many cases, it strengthens trust because educators know they are receiving authentic guidance focused on their growth and success. The ultimate goal is not simply keeping educators. The ultimate goal is helping educators become more effective so that students benefit from stronger instruction every day.
Start strong, our beginning of year foundations. The most effective evaluation process began long before the first observation ever takes place. At the beginning of the year, educators should clearly understand the evaluation process, the timelines, the expectations, and the purpose behind each component. When educators know what is expected, they are better positioned to meet expectations and to grow professionally. One of our responsibilities as evaluators is to reduce that uncertainty. Share evaluation schedules early. Explain observation requirements and timelines. Discuss how the rubric will be used and how feedback will support their professional growth throughout the year. This is also the ideal time to communicate that NCEES is not simply about ratings. It is designed to support continuous improvement. When educators understand that evaluations are connected to coaching, support, professional development, and instructional growth, they are more likely to engage fully in the process. A strong beginning creates the foundation for meaningful evaluation conversations throughout the year. Once expectations are established, fidelity becomes the key to the effectiveness. There are several considerations that we would like you to consider as you are moving forward with fidelity. Sticking to the evaluation schedule that you established is critical. Educators need consistency from their evaluators. They need confidence that observations, conferences, feedback, and ratings will occur according to the established process and timelines. Timely feedback is especially important. When feedback occurs shortly after an observation, educators can then make the connections between the evidence that was observed and their instructional decisions. Delayed feedback often loses its impact. The importance of using rubric language during evaluation conversations is very important. The rubric provides a shared definition of effective practice. Connecting feedback directly to the rubric descriptors helps educator discussions remain objective, evidence-based, and growth-oriented. Finally, ensuring that every observation cycle is completed with fidelity from the pre-conference through the post-conference, while providing meaningful support to educators throughout the process, is essential to maximizing the impact of your evaluation efforts. As evaluators, we cannot effectively assess what we do not fully understand. An important question for every administrator is whether they have a full understanding of the standards that they are observing and can clearly communicate those to their staff. Educators want to know what effective practice looks like, and they want clarity regarding expectations. Our ability to effectively define and describe the standards directly impacts their ability to meet those expectations. So, when providing feedback, always ask yourself these questions. Am I evaluating based on the standards? Have I explained what the standards look like in practice? Could the educator clearly describe my expectations after we have a conversation? The evaluation rubric only becomes powerful when it moves people from paper and into practice. The 4 actions highlighted on this slide provide a roadmap for maximizing the impact of NCEES. First, establish clear expectations. Second, observe intentionally through the lens of the standards. Third, connect your feedback directly to the evidence that was observed. Fourth, reinforce consistency across classrooms. One of the most important habits evaluators can develop is grounding feedback in observable evidence. Instead of telling the teacher what you think, show them what you observed and connect that evidence directly to the rubric descriptors. This will create clarity, objectivity, and credibility. We have highlighted for you some NCDPI provided teacher resources, and they include the North Carolina Teacher Rubric, the Professional Teaching Standards, and Standards by Rating Category. Additional resources for other educator roles can be located on the NCEES resource website, which is linked at the bottom of this slide. These resources can help to ensure consistency and strengthen evaluator confidence during observations and conferences. Evaluation should capture the complete picture of the educator's performance. This slide reminds us that the rubric addresses both professional practices and instructional practices. Sometimes evaluators focus heavily on what is seen during those classroom observations. While instruction is extremely important, professional practices are equally important in supporting overall effectiveness in the classrooms. It is important to note that with the North Carolina Teacher Evaluation Rubric, Standards 1 and 5 focus on professional standards, while Standards 2, 3, and 4 emphasize the instructional practices. As evaluators, we should intentionally gather evidence from multiple sources and consider how educators contribute both instructionally and professionally. NCEES provides a framework that allows us to assess educator effectiveness comprehensively rather than focusing on isolated moments or individual lessons. A teacher may excel instructionally, but may need support in collaborative practices. Another teacher may demonstrate strong professionalism, but they may need coaching around their instructional strategies. Our feedback should help educators to understand their strengths and identify opportunities for growth across all aspects of their professional practice. So know what your educators need. One of the most important leadership responsibilities is recognizing that not all educators need the same feedback or support. Some educators need targeted intervention and coaching. Others may need opportunities to extend their instructional capacity and continue growing beyond proficiency. The evaluation process generates information that should help us to differentiate our support. So ask yourself, who needs support with fundamental instructional skills? Who may need additional coaching? Who on my staff would benefit from advanced professional development opportunities? Who is ready for some leadership development? The strongest evaluators view NCEES not simply as a rating system, but as a tool for identifying and responding to the individual professional growth needs of their staff. This quote, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place." This quote has been often attributed to George Bernard Shaw, and it is particularly relevant to evaluation conversations. It's easy for supervisors to believe that they have delivered feedback simply because they shared comments or entered information into the NCEES system. However, communication is only successful when understanding occurs. A useful reflection question you may use would be, can the teacher accurately explain the feedback that I intended to communicate? If the answer is no, additional conversation may be necessary. Never assume communication has occurred. Confirm understanding through dialogue and through reflection. The power of feedback. If there is one slide that captures the heart of today's presentation, it is this one. High quality feedback are these things. It is specific, it is clear, it is supportive, and it is honest. We want to emphasize that honesty and support are equally important. When feedback lacks honesty, educators cannot identify areas for growth. When feedback lacks support, educators may not know how to improve. Consider the reflective questions on the right. Can your strongest educators identify the strengths that you've observed? Can your struggling educators clearly identify the areas that you've discussed with them for improvement? If not, we encourage you to strengthen the quality, the clarity, and the specificity of the feedback that you provide. Being growth-oriented does not mean being harsh. The goal is to be kind, honest, but direct. When performance concerns exist, address them clearly and professionally. Avoid vague language that may leave educators uncertain about the expectations. At the same time, recognize strengths intentionally. Effective feedback identifies successful practices that should continue, as well as practices that may need improvement. Support should always accompany the feedback. A productive evaluation conversation might sound like this. Here is what I observed. Here is how it aligns to the standards. Here is why it matters for students. And this is how I plan to support you and your continued growth. Keeping student outcomes at the center of these conversations helps to maintain the purpose and the focus. Effective post-observation conferences should not feel like a one-way performance review. They should feel like professional conversations. Invite educators to reflect on their lessons with you before you share your own observations. Ask questions, encourage discussion, and seek understanding. Educators often provide valuable context that may not have been visible during an observation. Evidence and artifacts can also enrich conversations and provide a more complete picture of the educator's practice. This slide includes an excellent DPI resource. It's called NCEES Questions for Post-Observation Conferences. These questions can help facilitators guide richer reflective conversations and increase teacher ownership of their own professional growth. The goal is not simply to deliver feedback. The goal is to promote reflection and growth. One common mistake that evaluators sometimes make is waiting until the end of the year to fully use their observation data. NCEES is both a formative and a summative instrument. It should inform decisions throughout the year, not just the annual summary ratings. The information gathered through observations and conferences can help to inform the following things: individual coaching plans, professional development priorities within your school, team and PLC structures, strategic staffing decisions that you may need to make, and retention and support efforts. As school and district leaders, we should continually ask, what patterns are emerging from our evaluation data, and how can we respond? Using NCEES data strategically allows evaluation to become a powerful school improvement tool. So, what happens now? As we begin to close, we encourage you to reflect on what actions will follow today's webinar. Ask yourself these questions. How will you demonstrate that evaluations matter, not only to the teacher, but to you? How will you improve the quality of your feedback that you give? And how will you lead professional growth rather than just simply managing compliance of the NCEES process? So what's next? We would like for you to jot down or think or talk to anybody who you may be working with. Identify 2 or 3 concrete commitments that can be implemented immediately by you, the leader of your school. How can sustained improvement begin? It begins with deliberate, manageable changes. So as you think about the 2 to 3 things that you can do, our ultimate goal is not for stronger compliance in completing the NCEES process, but our ultimate goal is stronger educators and better outcomes for students. So to sum up what we talked about today, maximize the NCEES process through fidelity of implementation, clear expectations, timely feedback, honest conversations, appropriate support, and strategic use of our NCDPI resources. So remember, the effectiveness of NCEES is largely determined how evaluators implement the process. When educators receive clear expectations and meaningful feedback, they are better positioned to improve instruction, strengthen their professional practice, and positively impact student learning.